Alright, so I've been looking at the Leica SL2-S recently. Right off the bat, the Leica SL2-S should be talked about a whole lot more. I find it's kind of a sleeper camera, to be honest. And if you're interested in purchasing it for yourself, I'm going to try and help you with that decision. Stick around for the part where we look at the photos it shoots as well. I've got some RAW files, some DNGs for you to download for free too. Link is in the description below. This video is sponsored by oliviameyer.com. I just launched my Technicolor Lightroom preset pack, so go and check it out. And before I start, this is not my full review. I will probably do one to be out in October, November sometime. So keep a lookout and maybe subscribe and hit the bell icon too. Any questions that I don't address right now, I'm happy to do so then. So let me know what questions you may have. It'll either be part of the review itself or I'll shout it out and address it individually at the end. Without further ado, here are some of my first impressions of this lovely camera. That should give you a hint already. Roll intro, baby. I wish I had a cool intro like Peter McKinnon and all the other cool kids.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? All right, let's get started. This is not a loaner unit. I found a really good deal online and I already bought it. So now we're just gonna answer should you. I'm gonna break this down into 3 simple questions. What does the Leica SL2-S feel like? What does it shoot like? What are the Leica SL2-S photos like? And then we'll take a look at my recommendation based on what we know right at this very moment. I'm not gonna look at video yet. It's one of the main reasons I bought the camera, but video is gonna take a little while longer for me. So we'll look to that in the fuller review coming out later on. One important thing, this is my 4th Leica camera. 3 before this camera are rangefinders, the M7, the M9, the M10P. I've owned several Canon and I still own some Fujis as well. So I look to cover both the viewpoints for someone coming from an M system or an M camera versus someone who's never owned a Leica before. It's 2 different vantage points and it'll change your view of this camera. So what does it feel like? The Leica SL2-S design, it feels like a big ass slab. I mean, not a brick, but like some solid mass in your hand. The aesthetics are still very much as you would expect from a Leica. It's got this Bauhaus inspired look, clear and distinct lines, a bit of a hump on the top, and in the SL2, this houses a GPS unit, I think. I have no idea what they've got up in there now. I know there is no GPS unit in the SL2-S. Now, when you place it on a surface, you will notice the rubber bottom. It grips. It doesn't slide around. A Leica M with its metal bottom plate will slide around. The Fuji X-Pros too. The SL2 does not. This is the first hint for the kind of use this camera is meant for. But hold that thought. Coming from a Leica M, you will immediately notice its weight, its heft. Now without a lens attached to it, it feels great in your hand. Attach a lens and you will feel its weight even more. And I'm talking M lenses here. The other thing is when the M lens adapter, it is tight. It is super tight. It feels like you're sharpening edges almost. I mean, snug is not the right word. There we go. Really, it is a tight fit. The reason I mentioned the M lens adapter being so tight is because I use a lot of adapters and some of them are kind of loose. It just fits good, you know? Now with the M lens attached as well, you know, the balance changes a little bit, but it still feels good. I mean, and then again, of course, this is the Sumilux 35mm 1.4, a super small lens. With the L-mount lenses that this camera is actually designed for, I don't have that much experience, but weight-wise, the Noctilux is at the lower weight spectrum of the native L-mount lenses, so I expect that the weight will now really start to become a factor. So M user versus standard DSLR user, M user is gonna feel the weight. Standard DSLR user won't know what all the fuss is about. One way or another, this is not meant to be a light camera. And it's not that Leica decided to make a heavy camera. It's just clear to me that the Leica designers and engineers decided low weight is not one of the criteria that would fulfill the purpose of this camera. How good is the Leica SL2-S build quality? Now, it does not feel cheap. If you come from an M camera, it will feel cheaper. And it's the plastic and the rubber. As an M user, you will be used to more metal at a lighter weight. Coming from most DSLRs and mirrorless system cameras, you will notice the premium feel in your hands. And not that the other cameras aren't premium, it's just that premium is Leica's forte, hands down. A Leica camera will always be the most premium feeling camera compared to everything else in its class. Now, what about the Leica SL2-S battery and SD card, you might say? Well, battery pops out like the ammo clip of a gun. Let me show you. Really nicely done. Another hint at the purpose of this camera. Leica wizards are telling us quick, functional, user-centric battery changes are important. Will we see this transported to an M at one point? Is the M10 series the last to have the iconic base plate? I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but you never know. We have two dual card slots on the side. We can double the storage or double the safety, and that already tells me this is more of a working man's camera. And not that the M's weren't used for some amazing work, but dual card slots are standard today, and they have been for at least 8+ years. The Leica M10R, released at the end of last year, did not have dual card slots. So Leica wizards are positioning the SL system in the hands of a person who thinks 2 SD card slots are important. Does the Leica SL2-S have engravings like the M cameras? Well, there is no engraved serial number on the top like I'm used to on my M cameras. They do have some branding engraved, but the serial number is printed at the bottom in that absolutely beautiful, sexy Leica font. But it's printed. Who cares? Well, funnily enough, some actually might. All right, let's get to the second part of this breakdown. What does this camera shoot like? First thing, the EyeRes viewfinder. It is just freaking awesome. It is responsive, it is detail rich, it is an absolute pleasure to shoot through. I love it. Some context. My primary EVFs of comparison are the Leica VisiFlex 020, the Fuji GFX50R, the Fuji X100F, the Sony a7S III, so I'm not totally out of date. The viewfinder on the SL2S is a pure joy to use. One other thing about the viewfinder, the picture I'm looking at, it is rendered not by, the Tamron lens that I've got attached to this Sony, it is rendered through Leica glass. The best damn glass on the planet. And oh boy, the EVF really shows off the glass you're attaching to it. And I think that's another reason why I'm just blown away by this viewfinder. I love it. Right now, the M10P zoomed in automatically in the EVF when you were focusing with manual lenses. You lose that with the SL2S. I miss it only slightly. I've adjusted very quickly to pressing a button to zoom in when focusing. Yeah, it's not an issue. I mean, when I used any of my old DSLR lenses on the M10P, that was the case as well, so, I don't mind. What does the Leica SL2S shutter sound like? Well, the shutter has a subtle, satisfying sound to it. Let's listen to it. Let's take off the lens. You already hear the difference, right? How much it's dampened by having the lens on here. One way or another, one thing is clear. I love the sound. It reminds me of the sound effects that they use in great cinema. I don't know. It's just me. I love the sound. The M10P is quieter. The M9 is louder. If you can hear like this rumbling sound like there are other people talking, that's because my neighbors are having breakfast or something else. I don't know. Yeah. What are you gonna do? I don't have my own studio like Peter McNicken does and all that stuff. Let's move on. Now, after half a lifetime of photography, I can hold cameras relatively still and shoot at low shutter speeds, especially M cameras with their lighter weight and their dampened shutter. That carefully placed humble brag was my segue to talk about IBIS, in-body image stabilization, baby. When it's quiet and you half press, you can hear the IBIS, just a slight hum. It sounds like when you take a shell and put it to your ear, it sounds like the ocean. And there's no known evidence that Leica engineered the sound of the ocean to be that of the SL2S IBIS. But they might have. How about that, huh? A Leica camera with IBIS. I never thought I'd see the day. I mean, 5 stops and some change, and damn it, it is good. Or it's real good. And you might say to me, hey, Ollie, hey, how good is good? And I might say to you, how about this handheld 2-second exposure good? That's right, you heard me. 2 seconds, handheld, this is the photo. And forget it, you're not gonna do that on an M without a tripod or some kind of jerry-rigged setup. Would you need to? Well, that's another question, right? I gotta say though, I slowed down my breathing, I centered myself, I became one with the camera. We shot a few shaky ones, and then we shot that one. It's not the best photo, but I just wanted to put it through its paces and show you what's possible, at least some of the time. Realistically, I would say 2-second exposures is a bit of a stretch. 1-second exposures, however, no issues. Absolutely usable. I'll show you some examples when we go through the photos later. How good is the Leica SL2S battery life? Now, battery life, I can't say for certain yet, but I feel at this point, this is the kind of camera you may want to have 3 batteries of. We will revisit this in my main review of the camera. I've switched the display setting to extended EVF, and that means that the display at the back and the EVF are off, and the proximity sensor switches the EVF on when I bring the camera to my face. The sensor is at the top of the eyepiece, and there are some angles where the sensor doesn't notice that I'm there despite being here. But what are you going to do? Now, the screen that at the back that they've got on this, it is beautiful, responsive as the EVF, but here's a gripe for you. It does not articulate. Now, silly as this may sound, it's something I've really come to appreciate while shooting video with the A7S III and also photography at times when I shot the GFX 50R. Especially when I want to shoot at waist level, like my Hasselblad 500cm, that's a bit of a shame. Dear Leica wizards, a Leica SL3 needs an articulating screen and it's still gotta look damn beautiful. You cannot compromise. That is why we pay you so much money. So please figure that one out. We trust you. Sincerely, us. So one last point about the UX of this all. And you know, I speak about UX often. I spoke about it in my Leica M10P video. UX is a recurring theme. And this may be more for you soon to be first-time Leica shooters about to join the Leica family. And you experience Leica shooters, well, you will know what I'm talking about. And I'd love to hear your take on this, Leica's UX. The SL2-S has 2 dials and 10 buttons, 11 if you count the shutter. Only 3 of these 13 are labeled. The remainder are all customizable with no labels, not one. Leica figures you don't need to know that they call this button FN1 or FN2 or FN39. If you're going to take the time to associate an action to a button placed in this location, you will know what that button is supposed to do. The FN labeling on other cameras has never really helped me in remembering what I've assigned to that location. And in Leica's case, it just means that there's less distraction on the back. And that is what makes a Leica. They do their damnedest to think of the photographer and his or her experience. And with all the digital goodness in this SL2S, it is that vein, that philosophy that still runs through this camera with as much intention as it does in an M camera. Now, of course, you could say an M3 or an M6 are the very definition of that philosophy, and you'd be right. But the M3 doesn't shoot 4K video and have autofocus and ISO 100 million. So whilst these features remind us that the purpose of the SL2S and the whole SL system is a different one to the M range, what an M and an SL, and probably all other Leicas share in common is that every design choice is made so that the camera, the viewfinder, the lens, even the subject being photographed all conspire with one another for the photographer to press the shutter release at precisely the moment he or she thinks it is right to do so. Wow. Now that sounds really frickin' pretentious, and it is. But it is also true. Leica shooters, weigh in on this. What do you think? Please, help me out here. I'm talking a load of BS or is there some merit to what I just said? And having said all that, it's got a display on the top which shows you exposure information. It doesn't show you the number of stops compensated, just a plus or a minus. You know, if you have, I'd prefer to know the number of stops. Nowhere does it show you the percentage of battery used, just an icon. This sucks. With my M10P and every other camera, I knew what 45% was going to get me. I could make an intelligent battery decision before I went out shooting if I didn't have a full charge. Why can the phone app tell me the percentage, but the camera cannot? Firmware update, Leica, get in there. Before we talk about what the photos are like, earlier I mentioned some sample RAW files. I've chosen 10 DNGs in different lighting conditions, which you can download for free and test out the capability yourself. Link is in the description below. Have fun and get back to me with your thoughts. All right, folks, this is the big one, right? What are the photos like? Right off the bat, they are freaking gorgeous. I love these files. To be totally honest, I don't feel like I've had the camera long enough to articulate everything I feel about image quality, but what I can say at the moment is I am more than satisfied so far. It creates beautiful DNGs, and if you are into post-processing like I am, you are going to get a lot of mileage out of these raw files. You can pull a lot of shadow detail out. It retains highlights impeccably well. The SL2S is an absolute low-light beast combined with the IBIS as well. Also, the JPEG engine. In this camera, it is awesome. It produces some of the most beautiful JPEGs I've ever shot. And I've owned every Fuji X100 except the V, so that is saying something. I really want to compare the black and whites from the SL2S to A-Cross on my X100F at one point. Maybe that's something I will do at a later stage. But rather than making too many statements beyond what I've said so far, let me show you some of my favorite photos that I've taken with this camera in my short time with it. Remember, I've had this less than 2 weeks, so I don't have too much subject material to show you yet, but I've got some. I'll show you that now. Okay, so this is the 2-second exposure I was talking about. I mean, that is pretty insane, right? Check this out. There's no blurred lines or anything like that. It is really impressive hand holding something for 2 seconds. Like I said, not realistic to pull it off every single time. In fact, you will pull it off less than more. This is the 3-second exposure, just FYI, that I tried out. I mean, you can see 3 seconds is now no longer possible, no chance. Forget about it. Unless you want to go for that shaky look, right? This, however, is a 1-second exposure. Now you can see even here, you still got a little bit of shake, but not much. I mean, you don't notice the camera shake as much, to be honest. 1-second exposures are much more accessible. Something that I would also do more often than, 2-second exposures. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Also, this was shot with the Noctilux, so hand holding a 50mm. That is really impressive. Now, if you can hear my fan ramp up, that's because I'm doing a lot of things on this computer and it seems not to like it. So this was shot with my 21mm Voigtlander at around f8 to f11 for 1/20th of a second. It is really impressive. I was in a bit of an odd crouch when I was doing this photo and I couldn't really anchor my elbows near my body, so it was odd. This is where IBIS now really is coming into play and I think it's super cool. This was one of the first photos that I took of my wife, actually, or this is one of the first photos that I took with this camera after having bought it. And it was shot on the Minolta 28mm f2.0. This one, I believe, was shot on the Noctilux, wide open, as you can see. So let me show you what this looks like without my editing or my preset. And that's with. It's just a gorgeous combination, the Noctilux and the Leica SL2-S. Obviously, I have had this camera for less than 2 weeks, although I'm a portrait photographer and a bit of an everyday life photographer. Right now, I'm shooting anything I possibly can, including this compost that I was bringing down. I just like the color combination. This is an interesting photo. Well, interesting in the sense that I've cropped in heavily. This is 25% of the frame, right? If we reset this, that's how much it actually is. I can crop in a lot and I can still retain really good detail. This is the Nikon 24mm f2.8. You can see there's still a lot of detail in the photo. This is heavily edited, big time. Major editing on this photo. This is from when I had the camera for the first time around in January. This one too, I was thinking of resetting my editing here on this photo, but then it becomes a little bit less safe for work. This one, on the other hand, again, heavily edited, so you can see like these raw files, you can do a lot with them. And if I go and reset this photo, it's a completely different look. So I really love the raw files that this camera produces. Of course, you've got to have the obligatory mirror shot. The reason I'm doing this more is to document the lens that I'm using. It's a gripe that I had with Leica in one of the previous videos, in my Leica M10P video, where I wish I had at least the ability to create custom lenses and then pick them from a menu. This is one way of documenting which photos I'm shooting. This shot is a rather uninteresting shot, but the reason that I shot this is actually a multi-shot. So this is 96 megapixels. And you can zoom in big time. I mean, the detail is great. It's really fantastic. It's so impressive what the multi-shot can do. And sorry for not having a better subject. Maybe I will next time. I don't know yet about the use case of this, so it's still something that I gotta figure out. Maybe you guys can tell me how you use multi-shot. This goes into the joy of photography. I really enjoy using this camera just for candids of my lovely wife who's been posing for me a lot over the past 10 days. This was shot on the 28mm Minolta. This was shot on the Summilux 35mm. If I cropped it, I kept this full. What I would do on this one is I would actually crop it. Just check that out, right? I mean, the combination of this camera and the Summilux 35mm, this camera loves the M system lenses. I think the M system lenses are the go-to lenses at this point for this camera. It's absolutely fantastic. I really enjoy it. The combination produced a stunning image. Summilux 35mm here. You can see this is the original. Edited a little bit, produces a beautiful image. Let's zoom in here. It's just gorgeous. One thing what I have been doing with this camera a little bit is self-portraiture. I wish that the Leica Photos app had the ability when you are composing yourself that you could then zoom in on your Photos app so that you can correct and adjust for focus, for critical focus. Because right now you can't. You cannot zoom in on your Photos app, which is a real shame. I wish I could do that. I've been experimenting a lot with self-portraits, especially because right now I haven't shot another model since I bought this camera. But it's kind of fun to shoot yourself. This is a RAW file. This is a JPEG file, slightly edited, but it's a JPEG file. And I have to say, I love I love the JPEG files that this camera produces. The black and whites are insane. Yes, I've played around a lot with the monochrome settings on this camera until I've got it to my liking. But now that I have, I really enjoy what you can do. These black and whites are just, it produces stunning black and white photos. Even this one here, this is also a JPEG. My wife, again, modeling kindly enough for us just before she's about to go on the trampoline. And here again, this is the Noct Deluxe and the SL2S. You are seeing in the dark. This is night vision. This is just such an amazing combination. This is also shot at ISO 10,000. It was so much darker than this actually shows. It's such an amazing combination. Noct Deluxe and the SL2S. My wife again posing for us here. I think she's doing her nails or something, I guess. The Leica M7 has always been my king, and it still is, right? In terms of daily life, especially take photos of our everyday life. But I am enjoying the SL2S for this in a manner that I did not expect. It's surprising, to be honest. And this photo of my wife's foot while she's sleeping is clear evidence of that. As you can see here as well, I guess my wife is paying some Zalando bill or something of the sort. I've got the 24mm Nikon 2.8 attached. Yeah, I feel like I can really get that documentary feel with this camera. I mean, I could get it with another camera as well, but this camera makes it fun also. That is a big thing, right? How the camera motivates you to take these photos. And here's another one from when I went out that evening. It's nothing special. You know, I'm not so good at nightlife or nighttime photography. I really just went out to test its high ISO capabilities and to have a little bit more photos for you to show you guys and to show you what this camera can and cannot do. My trusty Leica M10P with the Leica 28mm f2.8 attached, and such a gorgeous camera that it is, especially that silver finish, my goodness. And here also, let me just reset this. This is real, this is after editing. As you can see, it can capture a lot of detail with all this craziness going on here. And that's it, that's it. These are the photos that I've got for you. So, should you buy this camera? Here's my overall impression. Truth is, I enjoy shooting the SL2S more than I thought I would. Much more in fact. The first time I shot it in January, I thought it was a little bit too heavy, but since then my workflow's changed and there's a drastic reduction in gear that's necessary for me at the moment, and that's why the SL2S became an option again, and I'm so glad it did. I really enjoy this camera. The same kind of enjoyment that I'm used to from Leica M cameras. It just, you know, just handles different to every other brand out there. And maybe it's placebo, you know, but who cares? If Sony had the same placebo effect, then this channel might feature a lot more talk about G Master lenses and such. But Sony, and I'm not hating, you know, I respect what they're contributing to the creative scene, but their cameras don't have that effect on me. Leica does. And for some reason, I enjoy shooting the Leica SL2S much more than I thought I would. Leica SL2S is a complement to M shooters. If you are already in the Leica M system and you are looking to complement your photography with video, then the jury is still out, but my video findings so far, yeah, get it. Now the M240 is an option, but the viewfinder and the tech on the SL2S is just too awesome. Should you replace your Leica M camera with the Leica SL2S? Well, if you're looking to replace your M system with an SL system, the biggest consideration you've got to make is weight. The guy I bought this from wanted to replace his M240 with this. This guy is 65 years old, goes on huge hikes and disappears for a few days in the mountains. He sold this system to me within 3 months of getting it. Of course, he also had the L-mount lenses attached. One way or another, the SL system will not be the lightest of systems. Of course, I attach M glass, and you might too, so you may be right before or right after the point where weight starts to sway your decision here. So best check it out in a Leica store if you can. I have to say, I love M glass on this SL2S. It's like a match made in Wetzlar. And I'd even go as far as saying the combination of the camera, viewfinder, and M glass is my favorite camera lens combination ever. And I've only shot this camera shy of 2 weeks at the time that I'm shooting this video. And that's if we're talking digital cameras, that is. M7 is still the king. Should you buy the Leica SL2S as your first Leica camera? Now, if this is your first Leica camera and you're looking to get into Leica, then you really need to examine your reason. Is it the Leica brand? Well, then there are cheaper options, which throw you straight into the thick of the Leica philosophy. The M9, the M240, if you're into digital. Use the M10s are about the price of the SL2S, depending on the condition and whether there's still warranty available on it or not. However, it is a rangefinder system that you will be buying into, right? And you need to know that. If you don't mind the wait and want to skip the rangefinder experience, well, the SL system seems like a great choice. I like it a lot. I'm actually at the point where like this might just be my favorite system. It seems to be what Leica is looking to build up for those who do not want to go full on Henry Cartier, who need or want video but still prioritize shooting experience above 1,000 features. And sure, you've got the Leica L mount alliance for autofocus if that's what you're into. I hear that there's room for improvement on that front. I can't say yet. I might get one once, an L mount lens that is, but for the moment, it's this M glass right here. Oh yeah, baby. Should you be buying new or used? If you can get one in good condition and used, I would. If it's new, then you better make a kick-ass deal with a dealer. Maybe some price reduction on some used glass, get more than just the Leica M to SL adapter, which is a freebie right now on new buys. You should get more. An extra battery maybe, a better strap. I can't speak for all Leica dealers, but the folks at the Leica store here in Zurich, they are a good bunch of people. If you are in Zurich, check them out. Mr. Chaparro is a stand-up fella. Tell him Olivier says hi. You'll immediately know who you're talking about. Now, if I haven't already managed to help you make that decision, hit me up in the comments section. Or you can contact me directly via my site, www.oliviermeyer.com. Link is in the description below. One more thing. Next video or the one after that, it's not going to be so gear focused. Just a heads up. More about actual photography and the motivations for photography. So check those out when they come out. Maybe subscribe and hit the bell icon is what I'm saying. All right, anyways, show me some love. If you like what I'm doing here, tell a fellow photographer about my channel. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. Peace. And, oh, look at that sound, huh? Just those aperture clicks. Oh, gorgeous. So many other clicks. Even... yeah, let's get this back though.